Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Niccolò Machiavelli. Power exists in every interaction between people. Those who recognize this truth lead. Those who ignore it follow. Most of us move through life barely noticing how power shapes our relationships, clinging instead to comforting ideas about fairness and mutual respect. These ideals matter, but beneath them runs a current of power that flows regardless of whether we acknowledge it. Better to see clearly than remain blind. The most effective people understand when to stay quiet. While others constantly broadcast their thoughts and plans, they know that silence isn't merely the absence of speech, it's a tool. The average person speaks to express themselves. The strategic mind speaks only to achieve specific outcomes. Everything else remains unsaid. Consider two colleagues in a meeting. One eagerly shares every idea that crosses their mind, revealing their thought process in real time. The other listens carefully, asks occasional pointed questions, and offers precisely chosen insights. By day's end, who has gathered more information? Who has revealed less about their position? Who maintains more flexibility to adapt as circumstances change? The advantage is clear. Think of your words as currency to be spent, not simply given away. Every disclosure comes at a cost. When you announce your intentions, you create expectations others will hold you to. Change direction later, and you appear inconsistent or unreliable. Stay quiet, and you preserve your freedom to adapt without explanation. When you explain too much, you reveal how your mind works. Information others can use to predict or manipulate you. Perhaps most importantly, talking too much weakens your presence. There's truth in the old wisdom that distance creates respect, mystery creates distance, and silence creates mystery. Many believe that honesty requires constant disclosure, mistaking volume for virtue. They feel compelled to share every emotion, reveal every past mistake, announce every half-formed plan. Each unnecessary disclosure makes them more predictable and ordinary. Those who understand strategic silence recognize a fundamental truth. Information is advantage. To give it away freely is to disarm yourself. This doesn't advocate deception. Strategic silence isn't about lying. It's about selective disclosure. It's understanding that not everything that could be said should be said. It's recognizing that boundaries around information aren't just permitted, but necessary for effective operation in complex human systems. Michel Foucault understood this dynamic when he wrote about the relationship between power and knowledge. He saw that information isn't neutral. It creates power differentials. When you know more about others than they know about you, you gain leverage. This isn't manipulation. It's recognition of how human interactions actually work. Foucault noted how surveillance creates compliance. People behave differently when they know they're being watched. Strategic silence reverses this dynamic. By revealing less about yourself, you become harder to surveil, harder to predict, harder to control. Consider how silence functions in three distinct ways. First, when you remain quiet while others speak, you gather valuable information while revealing nothing. In negotiations, whoever speaks first typically loses advantage. The anxious party fills silence with concessions, reveals their priorities, and telegraphs their concerns. The patient party learns the landscape before committing to a position. Second, speaking only on significant matters builds authority. Responding to every small concern suggests insecurity, while selective engagement signals confidence. Look at any respected leader. They don't defend themselves against every criticism or weigh in on every minor issue. They choose their moments carefully, preserving their influence for when it truly matters. Third, maintaining some ambiguity preserves your options. By avoiding premature clarity, you can adapt to changing circumstances without appearing inconsistent. Politicians master this approach, making statements that different audiences can interpret differently. But this isn't just political calculation. It's recognition that premature precision often becomes a liability when conditions change. The psychological power of silence runs deeper than most realize. When you stay quiet, people fill the gap with their own thoughts and assumptions, often revealing more about themselves than you ever could through questioning. Your silence creates a canvas on which others project their fears, desires, and interpretations. This gives you insight into their thinking without exposing your own. Our culture increasingly values endless transparency and expression. Be authentic, people say. Share everything. This advice, however well-intentioned, ignores how power actually works. The strategic mind understands that binding yourself to every passing thought limits your future options. This isn't about dishonesty, but about recognizing that not every thought deserves expression. Not every emotion requires public processing. Not every plan benefits from early exposure. The transparency trap appears everywhere. The job candidate who reveals their salary requirements too early. The entrepreneur who details their business model to potential competitors. The negotiator who discloses their bottom line out of misplaced commitment to openness. In each case, transparency serves others' interests at the expense of their own. Carl Jung recognized this tension between our public and private selves through his concept of the persona, the social mask we wear. He understood that a healthy personality maintains boundaries between what is shared and what is kept private. The difference between Jung's insight and strategic silence is merely one of intention, consciously choosing what to reveal rather than simply hiding behind a mask before entering any new situation, professional, social, or competitive. Take time to observe before acting. Watch how power flows, who possesses it, how they acquired it, and how they maintain it. Notice which behaviors get rewarded versus merely praised. Identify the gap between stated values and operational realities. This observation period might feel like wasted time to the impatient, but it prevents costly mistakes. While observing, practice information asymmetry. Ask more than you answer. Listen for what's avoided as much as what's expressed. Notice emotional reactions, where energy rises and falls during discussions. These signal underlying values and concerns far more reliably than stated positions. In human systems, the most valuable currency isn't money, but attention. Where attention flows, power follows. Most people scatter their attention across immediate concerns, surface appearances, and emotional reactions. The strategic thinker directs attention with precision, controlling what others notice and what remains invisible. Consider what naturally captures human attention: novelty, conflict, threat, opportunity, anomaly, pattern. By understanding these triggers, you can direct attention strategically in any context. To focus attention on something, connect it to these triggers. To divert attention, disconnect it from these triggers or create competing stimuli. The one who controls where attention lands controls what gets prioritized. How you frame a situation often matters more than the situation itself. Present identical facts within different frameworks, and they yield entirely different conclusions. Most people accept the frames given to them by others. The effective thinker recognizes frames as tools, not truths. Any situation can be reframed to create new possibilities if you understand its underlying structure. Your position within any system largely determines what moves are available to you. In any domain, career, social life, competitive field, position constrains and enables different actions. Most focus exclusively on immediate gains, neglecting positional advantages that yield sustained benefits over time. The chess master sometimes sacrifices material for position because position eventually produces greater returns. Consider career advancement, taking a lateral move that places you closer to key decision makers often outperforms a promotion that isolates you from power centers. Building relationships without immediate benefit creates networks that later provide crucial support. Position building looks like wasted effort to the short-sighted, but creates sustained advantage for the strategically minded. Having options matters more than having certainty. The common mind seeks security through definitive outcomes and clear paths. The strategic mind pursues positions with multiple possible favorable outcomes. Maintaining options requires refusing premature commitments, preserving resources for emerging opportunities, and developing skills useful in various contexts. Those with options can wait for optimal conditions. Those without options must accept whatever terms are offered. Creating optionality means systematically eliminating single points of failure. In career, this means developing capabilities valued across industries rather than specializing too narrowly. In relationships, it means building diverse networks rather than depending on few connections. In finances, it means maintaining liquidity rather than locking resources into immobile assets. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, not simply as domination over others, but as mastery over oneself and one's circumstances. This form of power comes from developing the inner strength to resist immediate impulses in service of longer-term advantage. The truly powerful person isn't controlled by the need to speak, to react, to be validated. They possess the discipline to remain silent when silence serves them better than speech. We can understand strategic silence as an expression of Nietzsche's concept of self-overcoming. The average person remains enslaved to social and emotional impulses, the need to fill silence, to be seen as knowledgeable, to process thoughts externally. The exceptional individual has developed internal discipline that transforms these automatic reactions into conscious choices. The effective timing of action often determines outcomes more than the quality of action itself. The right move at the wrong moment fails, while even an imperfect move at the perfect moment can succeed. Most see only the action itself, ignoring its temporal context. The skilled operator recognizes windows of opportunity that open and close based on circumstances. Patience isn't inaction, but preparation meeting the right moment. 3 timing principles govern effectiveness in any domain. First, sequence matters. Certain actions create conditions for subsequent actions to succeed. Second, ripeness matters. Systems cycle between receptivity and resistance to change. Acting during receptive phases requires minimal force. During resistant phases, even massive effort yields little. Third, pace matters. Rushing creates preventable errors, while delay surrenders advantage. In environments where everything looks similar, creating meaningful contrast determines whether you get noticed. The strategic mind deliberately establishes differences that highlight strengths and downplay weaknesses. Without this contrast, even exceptional value goes unrecognized, treated as merely ordinary. Creating effective contrast requires understanding perception thresholds. People notice relative differences, not absolute values. A 10% improvement appears negligible unless contrasted with stagnation. A unique approach appears risky unless contrasted with the failures of convention. Position strengths against relevant weaknesses, and weaknesses against irrelevant strengths. Most leave the attribution of credit and blame to chance or others' self-interest. The strategic thinker actively manages this process, ensuring beneficial outcomes connect to their actions, while detrimental outcomes remain separate. This isn't manipulation, but recognition of how attribution naturally works. Proximity, sequence, singularity, and narrative control attribution. Proximity, what happens close to an event, gets causally linked to it. Sequence, what precedes an outcome, gets credited or blamed. Singularity, unique factors receive more attribution than common ones. Narrative, outcomes fitting existing stories receive stronger attribution than those requiring new explanations. Every competitive domain operates according to particular rules, some stated explicitly, most implied. The average competitor plays within the given structure. The strategic competitor first analyzes the structure to identify leverage points, inefficiencies, and uncontested areas. Different environments reward different approaches. The meta strategy transcends merely playing the existing game well. It involves changing the game to favor your capabilities. This begins with identifying current success metrics, then systematically question them. Why these metrics rather than others? Who benefits from them? What alternative metrics would advantage different approaches? Under uncertain conditions, resilience matters more than optimization. The highly optimized system excels in anticipated circumstances, but collapses when assumptions fail. The resilient system maintains functionality across varied conditions, including unexpected ones. The strategic mind builds robustness against unknowable threats, rather than fragile efficiency against known ones. Creating resilience requires redundancy, modularity, adaptability, and slack resources. Redundancy means multiple paths to critical outcomes. Modularity means components that function independently, limiting failure propagation. Adaptability means systems that reconfigure as conditions change. Slack resources means reserves that activate during disruption. Most listen to respond rather than to understand, revealing their thoughts while gaining minimal insight. The skilled listener attends to what remains unsaid, what receives emphasis, what triggers emotional shifts. They notice inconsistencies between stated positions and behavioral signals. This deeper listening extracts information others don't intend to provide. Mastering strategic listening requires suppressing the ego's demand for expression. The compulsion to demonstrate knowledge, correct others, or share personal experiences sabotages information gathering. Discipline this impulse. Ask questions that expand disclosure rather than narrowing it. Show interest that encourages elaboration. Leverage amplifies force. The ordinary person applies direct effort, working harder when results prove insufficient. The strategic mind identifies points where minimal input yields maximal output. Leverage exists in every system. Places where small actions trigger cascading effects. Types of leverage include mechanical, tools amplifying physical force; financial, capital amplifying productive capacity; informational, knowledge creating decision advantage. Social, relationships amplifying influence. And psychological, triggers activating predictable responses. By stacking multiple forms of leverage, outcomes vastly exceeding apparent effort become possible. All systems operate under constraints: time, money, attention, goodwill. The ordinary mind allocates resources reactively based on immediate pressures. The strategic mind allocates proactively based on potential returns. This requires ruthless prioritization, concentrating resources where leverage exists while accepting deliberate limitations elsewhere. Better to achieve dominance in critical areas than adequacy in all areas. Our minds contain built-in distortions that affect judgment. Awareness doesn't eliminate these biases, but enables compensatory strategies. Key distortions include seeking evidence that supports existing beliefs, overweighting easily remembered information, preferring loss prevention over equivalent gains, and assuming others' actions indicate correct behavior. Strategic thinking requires systematic bias correction. Create decision processes that counteract known distortions. For confirmation bias, actively seek disconfirming evidence. For availability bias, use structured information gathering rather than relying on memory. For loss aversion, reframe decisions to neutralize status quo preference. Stories dominate facts in human understanding. Most believe they form judgments based on objective assessment, but psychological research consistently shows narrative coherence matters more than factual accuracy. The strategic mind recognizes that controlling the story framework determines how facts get interpreted. Effective narratives contain specific elements: protagonist identification, who represents us; antagonist definition, what opposes us; value assertion, what matters; causal attribution, why events occur; and resolution path, how problems get solved. By constructing narratives with these elements properly aligned, you shape how others interpret events, assign blame, allocate resources, and make decisions. Most overestimate what they can accomplish quickly, while underestimating what they can achieve with persistence. The ordinary mind demands immediate results, abandoning promising paths when instant success doesn't materialize. The strategic mind takes the longer view, recognizing that significant outcomes require sustained application over time. Cultivating patience means accepting that meaningful change rarely occurs within preferred timelines. Systems have inherent delays between input and observable output. This delay creates the illusion of failure during early effort stages. Those who persist through this apparent plateau before visible results emerge gain disproportionate advantage. The ordinary mind starts with current resources and capabilities, then projects forward to possible outcomes. The strategic mind begins with the desired end state, then works backward to determine required steps. This approach identifies critical dependencies, capability gaps, and sequence requirements that forward planning often misses. Executing backwards planning requires precise outcome definition, not vague aspirations, but specific, measurable conditions. Then methodically identify the immediate prerequisites for that outcome, the prerequisites for those prerequisites, and so on, until reaching present capabilities. The rigid mind develops one plan and persists regardless of feedback. The strategic mind distinguishes between firm objectives and flexible methods. This balanced approach maintains direction while adapting tactics to emerging information and shifting circumstances. Implementing strategic flexibility requires clear hierarchy among goals. Primary objectives remain fixed, while secondary objectives adjust to serve them. Approaches and methods change freely based on effectiveness. This creates consistency in destination while permitting innovation in route selection. Advanced preparation determines performance under pressure. The ordinary person attempts to develop capability during critical moments, guaranteeing suboptimal execution. The strategic mind invests disproportionate effort before crucial junctures, ensuring capabilities exist when needed. Effective preparation focuses on scenario planning, skill development, and resource positioning. Scenario planning identifies potential variations in how events might unfold. Skill development ensures required capabilities function automatically under stress when conscious processing becomes impaired. Resource positioning places necessary assets where they can be immediately deployed when opportunities emerge. Strategic reality operates regardless of individual awareness or participation. Those who understand its principles gain advantage. Those who ignore them serve the objectives of those who don't. The choice isn't whether to engage with these dynamics, but whether to engage consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or accidentally, effectively or ineffectively. Power flows toward those who create value through strategic position. It flows away from those who create value without strategic position. The world rewards effectiveness above effort, results above intentions, positioning above merit. This reality neither requires acceptance nor permits denial. It simply functions, like gravity, regardless of approval. Apply these principles with precision, patience, and perspective. Seek power not as an end, but as means to meaningful ends. Without purpose beyond acquisition, power becomes hollow victory. Control without direction, influence without impact. The truly strategic mind develops capability, not merely to dominate, but to implement vision beyond what others can conceive or execute.